All right, welcome to The Explainer. We hear it all the time. Technology is neutral, right? It's just a tool. But what if a technology as big as Bitcoin wasn't neutral at all? Today, we're diving into a really provocative argument that Bitcoin is actually a piece of software specifically designed to execute a controversial political ideology. So, the source for this whole discussion is David Golumbia's book, The Politics of Bitcoin Software as Right-Wing Extremism. And we're going to break down his main arguments piece by piece. Okay, so let's just get right into the heart of it. Golumbia's main point is a real challenge to how most people think about tech. He's not just saying that certain people like Bitcoin. No, his argument goes way deeper. He's saying the politics are actually written into the code itself. Think about it like this. A hammer is just a hammer, right? You can build a house or you can break a window. The author says Bitcoin is not like that. He argues its design, the actual software, is built to do one thing, to put a very specific political idea into practice. In his view, it's software that is politics. So, if we're going to get our heads around this claim, we first have to ask, okay, what politics are we even talking about? Golumbia says you can't understand what Bitcoin was designed to do without understanding the ideology that gave birth to it. And that brings us to this key idea in the book. Cyber-libertarianism. This is, according to the author, the intellectual and cultural soil where Bitcoin first took root. Now, Golumbia makes it clear this isn't just about wanting a free and open internet. I mean, who doesn't want that? No, this is a much more intense worldview. It's the belief that real freedom comes from technology itself, and that any government trying to regulate it is, by definition, a threat to that freedom. And this is where things get really interesting, because according to the author, this ideology completely redefines some basic words we all think we know. Take government. Most people see it as a system, maybe flawed, but one that's accountable to the people and provides services. But in the cyber-libertarian view, nope. Government is always the problem. It's seen as this inherently tyrannical force that you have to fight against. And it's the exact same story with the word freedom. You might think of freedom as having the right to get an education or healthcare, but in this view, that's not it at all. Freedom basically just means one thing: freedom from the government. And as the author presents it, this idea gets pushed so far that a completely unregulated free market is seen as the ultimate, purest form of freedom. Okay, so with that foundation, let's see how all this builds towards a very specific target that Golumbia connects directly to far-right thinking, a deep hostility towards central banks. So if you believe all that, what's the big conspiracy that ties it all together? Well, the author argues that the fire behind Bitcoin isn't just coming from some dry economic theory. It's fueled by some pretty specific and conspiratorial ideas about how money and banks really operate. I mean, look at these core beliefs. They're pretty intense, right? The whole system is a plot to steal from you, it's run by some shadowy elite, and inflation isn't just an economic process, it's deliberate theft. The book actually traces these exact ideas directly to groups like the John Birch Society. So this whole thing is framed not as a simple critique of monetary policy, but as an epic battle against a secret cabal. And here's the big one, the killer stat you hear all the time in these circles, which the book cites from a John Birch Society pamphlet. The claim is that the US dollar has lost over 95% of its value since the Federal Reserve was created back in 1913. I mean, that's a jaw-dropping number, and it's an incredibly powerful talking point. But here's the catch. The author says that that number, while technically kinda true, is also incredibly misleading. Why? Because it completely ignores everything else that happened in the last century. It ignores massive wage growth, it ignores interest, it ignores investment returns. He basically argues it's a cherry-picked stat designed to paint a really distorted picture of history, all to fuel a political argument. Okay, so if you're convinced that government is tyranny and central banks are part of a giant conspiracy to rob you, what do? Well, this is exactly where the author says Bitcoin comes in. It's positioned as the ultimate technological solution to this ideological problem. Yeah, this slide really lays out the whole thought process, doesn't it? Step 1, you identify the problem, untrustworthy central banks creating inflation. Step 2, you set the goal, create money that no government can touch. And step 3, you build the tool, a decentralized, algorithm-driven software with a strictly limited supply. And that tool is Bitcoin. And get this, the author points out that Bitcoin's own creator, the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto, said as much himself right from the beginning. Look at this quote. The goal wasn't just, let's make digital cash. The whole point, The root problem he wanted to solve was removing the need to trust institutions like central banks, which he saw as having a history of breaches of that trust. But here's a huge irony that the book dives into. For a currency that was designed to be immune to debasement, losing its value, Bitcoin's own history has been wildly volatile. It went from over $1,000 all the way down to $200. In terms of what you could actually buy with it, that's a massive loss of value, the very thing it was supposedly built to prevent. All right, this brings us to the final and maybe the most important point the author makes. This idea that software itself has a political program, that it's not neutral. So the big takeaway here is this. Golumbia argues you just can't separate Bitcoin, the technology, from the right-wing political ideas it was built on. Things like having a fixed supply of coins or being decentralized. He says those aren't just cool tech features. They are the actual implementation of a political belief system written in code. And this really sums up the whole argument. The technology itself, according to Golumbia, becomes a vehicle for these assumptions. So by using and promoting Bitcoin, he argues, you're also spreading that political worldview it was born from, whether you mean to or not. And so the book leaves us with a really tough question. For anyone who sees progressive or even just neutral potential in Bitcoin, Golumbia throws down a challenge. How do you take a technology that was, he argues, built from the ground up to serve one political extreme and use it to achieve completely different or even opposite goals? It's a heavy question that really gets to the heart of what technology is and what kind of politics might be hiding inside it.